I'm getting ready to glue these pieces together. We've cut them down a little bit to make them a little bit closer to the size we need them to be. No point in having a whole bunch of extra bulk. So you can see I've got these two clamps already sitting here, and there's not much left to do besides start putting glue on here.
The bottom side underneath here is the part that's the most important. The top, it doesn't really matter too much. You might need to take this loose and get this more level on the back side, because you really want that back side as level as you can get it. Because this feels, there's a lip there.
Yeah.
So try to get that lip out of there
Gotta...
as much as you can. If you loosen it, you might be able to just clamp it across this and get the lip out. I don't know, maybe not. I don't know. It depends on how thick they are. You're going to have to work quick, because it'll set up and it will be very hard to move. This side here is the offending side, I think. I think it's... So if we can press it down...
On this side we got the opposite.
Yeah, that one moved a little bit. This one didn't want to move, but it's moving now, I think, finally. There it goes. It's finally moving. All right, so tighten this back up a little bit. And maybe, I don't know, that one might be harder to get in there because you can't reach it. Just try to hold it flat, I guess, or maybe just put it right on the end, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to work. Might have to put
Put a block across it. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, put something.
Flat.
Oh, something flat, yeah, but that'll glue to it. But yeah, that might work. Put that under it. And then clamp it down. And you said it was the other side, seemed like. Maybe, I don't know if clamping both sides will work or not. It might work.
So this new top has had sufficient time to dry. It's dried over the weekend. So my next step should be to take the old top, get it aligned on the center line, and trace it so I have an idea what to cut out. I'm going to trace it with this black Sharpie, the thicker one, so I have a little bit more play in my line, and then when I cut it out, I'm going to leave the line just so that I know I can cover any little inaccuracies, especially around these edges where the edge of the top has broken off. So I'm going to make sure I get this good and aligned and get a good trace, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So just like that, I've got this traced on here, and I think I'm ready to cut this out. So we might go over to the saw and cut this out. Well, there you can see I've got the new top flipped over with the top side down, just so that I can lay the old top on there flat. You can see that I left a little bit, and nowhere did I take off too much. So that's good, but it's starting to take the shape of a mandolin top. It's starting to. Guess I got a ways to go. Well, my next step here, I'm going to use the router and go along the edge here. I think you can see the pencil line. Jerry's gone ahead and drawn me, actually he's drawn me 2 pencil lines, but the first one is just to get a good feel for it. The second one is actually where I'm going to stop. We've got the router set to depth and the right bit in it, You can see I've got it clamped down to the table, so I am gonna just get about, you know, this much, and then I'll unclamp it, move it, clamp it back down. I've got some goggles and a mask here. I'm gonna get all hooked up before I get started, but this is what I'm doing. Well, you can see where I got on my first attempt following that first line. I think it was pretty good. I had a little problem here where it got thinner and there was a little less resistance, so it wanted to really go in. I should have less of a problem when I get up to the next line I'm cutting to, and I am cutting this line to the same depth, so this isn't going to be a problem. But you can see that's what it looks like after the first one. Now I'm gonna get it set up, clamp back in. I'm gonna cut to this line next. Well, now that got this finished routing, brought it over. Jerry already kind of started. You might be able to see, but he was showing me how to use the planes. Start knocking this down. You might be able to see he drew a little circle here, an area I don't really want to touch. This will be my my high spot where the bridge will go. So he's suggested using this plain little one, but it's got kind of the curved, and it has this piece that kind of sits in your hand, so it wouldn't be so difficult on the fingers. And then I've also got my finger plane sitting here, so it's going to be some time carving. Give you an idea of kind of what it looks like. And he said you could use this one, the bigger one, for the rough, and then once I get a little finer, to use the finger plane. So I'm going to get to carving, and I'll maybe bring you back in a little while. I'll show you where I get, if I make any good progress. Well, I'm getting ready to go to lunch, so I figured I'd give you a little update on to where I got. You can see it's I mean, it's taken shape. It's just taken quite a bit of carving. I think you can see here what I've kind of taken off, and it's not all of it, but there's a lot of it there. It's a lot of carving. I've still got a long ways to go. But I'm going to take a break and go to lunch, come back, carve some more. Lots to do. Well, here's a little update as to where we're at. You can see we've kind of well defined our center a little more. I've pretty much switched over to the finger plane. It seems to work a little bit better actually, especially the larger plane seemed to dig out a lot more, whereas with the little finger plane I can keep it a lot more level, a lot less divots. I've just about got this higher spot down to where we routed out all the way around. You could probably see it doesn't take too long to take quite a bit of a pile off of there with this.
In that letter full of kisses, I'm gonna have me a bone. Baby,
well, it's about quitting time for today, so I'm gonna stop carving. You can see the pile here is everything I've carved off by hand. I haven't thrown anything away. The only stuff that's actually disappeared is the stuff that's on the floor or on me. But Jerry had a suggestion on a good way to judge how close I am, and the bridge for this mandolin, you know, fit the old top really well, so it should be able to fit the new top, right? Well, I still got a ways to go. There's quite a bit of space underneath there. So we still got a ways to go on this, even just on the top. We're getting there. I mean, it's definitely starting to look like a mandolin top. And I think that's good. So I got a lot of cleaning up to do before I call it quits for tonight. So I'm going to start doing that. And get back to this in the morning. Well, it's a little bit of an update time. You can kind of see where I'm at. It's really starting to take shape. I've started to get the corners kind of fanned up like they're supposed to be. Jerry said that it should hold the marble, and it stays on there. So we're getting pretty close to where it's supposed to be. It's just a little bit more carving, making sure I get rid of all the high spots. Like right now there's a little bit of a high spot right here. I'm trying to work it out. But I'm getting there. It's coming along. Shouldn't be too long now. I didn't really show much of it, but I had switched over to the toothed blade on the finger plane to help level my top. With the little teeth, it kind of lets you cut from more directions, so you can make sure what you're doing stays level and you don't have any deep ditches. What I've started doing now is I've got the scraper and I'm scraping just to get out all those little teeth marks, and once again keep it level, one smooth surface pretty much. So I've been doing a lot off camera. You can see I've got the sound hole cut out. This is the top. The outside of the top is the inside of the top. It's starting to look a little bit more like a mandolin top now. What I've been doing, last at least, I've got this carved out to the shape it pretty much needs to be in. I've been taking some sandpaper trying to get rid of any unevenness, make this all nice and smooth, because it's kind of wavy because of the how we cut it, how we carved it. So I'm taking my sandpaper and trying to get the waviness out. It may yet be a mandolin top. So since we're just about to where this mandolin needs to be, I've started working on getting this kind of rosette installed. It's been kind of a pain to do. I started off with the compass, you know, measuring out where they needed to be. And then I took the X-Acto knife and just kind of scored along the edges. And then once I got that, you know, kind of deep, I've taken this kind of pick tool. And I've just been scraping out in the channel to get it deep enough to put what we're going to put in there. Just thought I'd give you an idea how I'm doing it there. I still got quite a bit ahead of me, so I'm going to keep working on it.
On paper are better than the kisses at home. Write me a letter, send that letter by mail, send that letter in care of the Tupelo County Jail. Full of kisses, I'm gonna have me a ball. Baby, kisses on paper are better than kisses at home.
Well, you saw me bend those pieces to fit around the hole. Now I've got them kind of pressed in where they need to be, and I use the superfatic glue to glue them in. I'm using the tape to hold it down where it doesn't need a whole lot of pressure, and then I actually had to clamp it down in a couple of places to push it down in the hole. But that superfatic glue shouldn't take too long to set up, but I am going to give it some time. So this had quite a while to dry, overnight actually, but I've gotten all the tape and the clamps off and I've started taking it down. I started with the little finger plane, just taking off the high spots, which is all around, but I started taking off most of it with the finger plane, and then once I got close to the top, I've got some 220 and I'm just sanding it down to match and blend it with the top. It's starting to look pretty good. Give you a look. Remember, this part where it joins is going to be covered up by the fretboard, so the how it looks there doesn't matter all too much. But I'm pretty happy with it. I'm surprised actually how well it turned out. So I've got quite a bit of fitment to do here. I'm gonna keep on sanding. Well, I've gone ahead and got this new, what's going to be the inside brace glued in. It took a little bit of shaping. I made it fit the curve like perfect by putting some sandpaper in the bottom, and then I ran it across so it matched the curve of the inside of this top. It's glued up now, all clamped up. I'm going to let it sit for a while. It's looking good. After it's set up and dried, I can carve it down a little bit closer to the shape the old one was in. So now we wait. So I just got finished carving this brace out with the chisel. Now I'm giving it a little sanding down. Make sure it's all smooth. There's that new brace all glued in and carved down. It's looking pretty good. I'm gonna sand a little bit more, make sure it's smooth as it should be. Then I can start working on the fitment with the body up at where the fretboard joins. So these two binding pieces, they go in between the top and the neck. Well, we decided not to use them because they're two separate pieces. So we decided to just make one piece to replace these. And that way we can make a square piece that goes in and carve it down to fit the shape of the new top and line up perfectly. So I have gone ahead and cut out this little rectangle of plastic. It's about the right color and the yellowness. It's a little off, but it'll look pretty good. It's already been thinned down to the same size that these were, so it fits right in there, you can see. So we'll glue it in there and then we'll carve it down, shave off what we don't need, and then it'll line up perfect. It'll keep the top flat. Pretty much that's how we're going to do that. Something else I've been working on besides this is keeping this plane here level, more or less. So you can see I've cleaned out one little channel down the center where I can run a straight edge. Then I can look and see if there's any gap. And at the moment, the very end of this is still kind of high. So I might take my scraper or some sandpaper and try to take that down just a little bit. That way we can keep this all straight, all level, and it'll just run nice and smooth across here when we go to glue the fretboard back on. So there's the couple of things I've been working on. I've still got a little ways to go on keeping this level. Well, I'm trying to get this ready to glue it on. You can see I've got the piece of binding around the sound hole. So it's bound, it's glue enough. It shouldn't take too much longer and it'll be nice and set. I can kind of scrape it down and match the height of the wood, because there's a couple spots where it's a little high. I've also got the second kind of ring around the sound hole put in. I'm thinking once I get this binding to the size it needs to be, we're ready to glue this on, I think. If nothing else comes up, that's the order that this is going to be done. Well, the time has come. We're ready to glue this on. I've already taken the block with the sandpaper on it and run it across here, making sure we got as much glue off as I can.
Send that letter by mail. Send that letter in care of the Tupelo County Jail. Write me a letter. Send that letter by mail. Send that letter in care of the Tupelo County Jail. The Tupelo County Jail. The Tupelo County Jail. Clickety sounds of a southbound freight and the high-speed hum of a passenger train becomes a part of the soul and the heart and the mind of a boy who's raised by the railroad line. Hear the sounds of the whistle at the cross in the road.
Well, this has been clamped up for about 3 hours, I think. While it's been clamped up, I've started working on getting this plastic piece in here and getting it close to fit. But I've got to the point in which I can't fit this any better with the clamps in my way. So I'm going to go ahead and take the clamps off. It's been, long enough. Everything should be good. And this way, I can keep moving forward. So since I've got the clamps off this, I've gone ahead and kind of cleaned up the edges so that it was a little closer to flush with the sides. I have cleaned up where it joins the neck a lot more than it was. It's not totally perfect yet, but what I was going to do next was look into routing the binding slot. So I went and I asked Jerry for what he uses to route the binding slot, and he gave me this tool that goes on the end of your Dremel, and you can see it sits like this. This rides along the sides, and then the Dremel bit sticks out of that little hole and cuts. But the problem with this is this should be able to move in to adjust the depth, but the screw that holds it in there is so tight we can't get it to move. Jerry's been trying to get it to move and it just it won't move. So until Jerry gets this fixed, this is kind of sitting to the side. Hopefully by the next time you see it, we should have a way to route this binding slot. Until then, here we are. Well, I'm fairly certain that in the last clip I was talking about how I couldn't get this one screw loose to adjust the depth of cut on the binding slot cutter, the tool for the little Dremel tool. Jerry did fix this. It's got a new screw, so now I can get this loose to show you what this does, how important this is. I can get this loose. Well, I can get this loose. See? There we go. Comes loose, and then when I screw this in, it changes how far it cuts into the side. So it was really important that we had that working to get this cut. So it is cut. I've gone ahead and it was kind of a slow process, so I didn't really bother filming it. I was being real careful not to make any expensive mistakes. But I've got this binding channel cut. I did a little bit of cleaning with the chisels just to make sure I didn't take off more than I needed to. Now that it's cut, I'm ready to put some binding in it. And initially I thought I was going to put the old binding on, but there is a couple problems with the old binding. You can see like where it broke, if it'll focus. There, where it broke, it gets really thin. What we've decided is with the new top, we're just going to put some new binding on it. And this is some cream colored plastic binding. It's actually the same color as the piece I put in between the top and the neck. And the nice thing about this plastic binding is it actually bends really well. And even in that kind of tight first bend it does, it bends really easy. So I think I'm going to glue it on, and then after it's set up, just kind of blend it to match the top, and then cover up some of the rough spots from using the routing tool. So I've got my superfatic glue and the binding tape. I'm going to use that and glue this binding on.
Send the trucks and the tractors on the flat car load becomes a part of the soul and the heart and the mind of a boy who's raised by the railroad line. And the big round penny that you laid on the rails and the wheels smashed flat, and the glimpse of the ladies and the pictures of the men in the engineer's hat, and the brakeman waves from the red caboose. It's a part of the past, never quite turned loose. It's a part of the soul and the heart and the mind of a boy who's raised.
Well, the binding tape is not wanting to stick to the raw wood very well, so I'm going to use the rubber and wrap this up as well. So the binding tape will hold the binding in place pretty much, and then I'm just going to wrap the whole thing a couple of times and make sure it holds in place. Alright, so I got it all wrapped up. I think I'm going to let it sit up for 5 or 10 minutes. The superfatic glue doesn't take long to set up entirely, but I think this is going to help. I can see where it's squeezed it a lot better. It's kind of tiring getting it all set up, but lots of wraps. Looking good. Well, I gave the glue some time to set up, and now I've got my razor blade. I'm kind of holding it a little far up so there's not too much over the wood so I don't end up scratching up someplace I don't want to. And I'm scraping the high spots of the binding down, taking off any excess glue once I get to the wood, and just trying to even it all out. I'll go back through a little bit later with some sandpaper and then take it back basically to the shape it was, but now with the binding. If I get in to an area where it might help, I could use the X-Acto knife, the round-ended X-Acto, and just scrape it that way. If it were a lot higher, like if I had a lot more to take off, I could use a chisel or even the finger plane. But right now I've been using the razor blade, and it's been working pretty well, coming out pretty straight. Starting to look pretty good. But I still got a ways to go on blending this all together. Well, I've kind of jumped ahead. For as long as this is taking me, I'm trying to get as much done as I can. I'm trying to move fairly quickly. So, not everything gets filmed as well as I would have liked, but I think the last time I showed this, I was scraping the binding. As soon as the binding was scraped, we started working on color. It did end up a little darker than I was anticipating. It is darker than this. However, really, if you look at it, the original color, it's pretty close, which means this actually matches the back fairly well. Anyways, I'm starting to like the look of this. This was kind of some trial and error going on here. Originally I started out with just the dyes and a cloth wiping it on, but it came out really kind of splotchy and uneven. So then what we did was we put the dyes in some lacquer and put it in the airbrush and airbrushed it on and did a little heavier around the edges, and it kind of blended it together better. Anyways, it's looking pretty good, and especially when you look at the back, I think it matches the back well. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time cleaning up the binding. There's one spot where it's kind of dark up in there. Anyways, I'm going to kind of make sure it's all looking good before I clear coat it. But it's almost time to clear coat this, I think. Almost there. So we've decided to glue the fretboard back on before we clear coat it. So what I'm doing now is making sure the section where the fretboard's going to get glued to doesn't have any of the lacquer from my airbrushed or any other, excess glue. Just anything it's not going to stick well to. I'm trying to get it to wood kind of contact. I'm getting there. I will bring you back to show you where I get it before I glue the fretboard on. Alright, we're ready to glue this fretboard back on. I've got some clamps out. I'm going to put this on here and then push it all the way up against the nut, get it in line, and then start with this one here. I'm going to go ahead and put the block on there to kind of even out the pressure, and that way it kind of can't move back and forth or side to side as much because it's pressed against the nut, which never came out. And it should stay in place a little bit better that way. I hope. Wouldn't you know, the second I start to put glue down, the camera dies. So I couldn't just, step away from my wet glue and go get a new battery. Anyways, the fretboard is clamped on. Made sure to get a good even coverage, not too much glue. I've gone ahead and already cleaned it up. It's looking pretty good. It's nice and aligned, I think. Yep. It's looking good. Just needs some time to set now. So we've had quite a few clear coats on this Palau mandolin. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it back to see if I can get it level. What I've got here is some 400, and this is dry, and this is the new way Jerry's decided he wants to do this. This is, the sandpaper doesn't build up like the wet or dry does. So really, when I sand this down, it'll just be powdery, whereas if I were doing it with the other one, it kind of build up, you know, it'll roll off, end up being a big mess, and this dry does as good of a job or better than the wet stuff does. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to just start with my fingers and just sand this down a little ways.
By the railroad line.
Well, there's that side. You can probably see there's a couple of shiny spots. The one in here, there's a couple around the edge. And those are low spots compared to the rest of the finish because I didn't hit them with the sandpaper. So I'm going to go ahead and keep sanding. I'll probably end up doing the whole thing and the sides as well. I think it's going to look pretty good once I get it nice and even. So that's the goal. So I leveled out the finish with the dry 400, but after that I went ahead and used a wet 600 and then a wet 1200. And you can see where it's at. The next thing I'm going to do is use the semi-chrome polish. I've got a applicator rag here, kind of moistened, so time to get to polishing this. To do, so I'm not going to film all of it, but that should give you an idea of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and kind of what it's going to look like. You can see that line there where I've polished and then to where I haven't. It's going to look awful good when it's done. So since I've got this polished up with the semi-chrome, I'm going to go ahead and put some of the Renaissance wax on it. I have already put the tailpiece on it. I'm not too worried about that being in my way.
By the railroad line, and the big round penny that you laid on the rails and the wheels mashed flat, and the glimpse of the ladies and the pictures of the men in the engineer's hat, and the brakeman waves from the red caboose. It's a part of the.
Well, you just saw me sanding to fit the old bridge to the new top. It's fitting pretty well, but something I'm moving focus to is the fretboard could use a little bit of conditioning, a little cleaning. So Jerry's got this new Be Good wood oil. It's made with beeswax. Anyways, I've followed the directions. I shook it up. It says to warm it under warm tap. I've already done that. I'm going to see what this does. Hope it's good. I'm going to put this on just like I put the linseed oil on. Rub it in and then take the dry side. Rub it down pretty good. Take off any excess. Well, I don't see any problem with that. Looks like it works well. I'm going to give it a few minutes to dry and maybe watch it, make sure it doesn't do anything funky. We've had it strung up. Once I got it strung up, the action was really high. So me and Jerry were working on bringing the action down. If you remember when the old top was on here, the action was really high. And we took it down some. And then, you know, with this one, the action was high again. Been a little bit of a difficult process getting the action to come down on this with the non-adjustable bridge saddle. One thing we did was I made a new saddle. It's all one piece now rather than these pieces, because this is how it was. It was the 4 pieces and they were in a line, and that was your saddle. It's harder to adjust the height all the way across with these because, you know, you have to adjust them individually. So what I went ahead and did was just made a new antler saddle for this. That way when I need to adjust the height for it, I can take off all the way across, not just, you know, one at a time. Something else we did, we got this to the point which we really can't take any off the bottom because of the hole for the pick guard. So I basically had to take all that we wanted to take off the top. So we had to lower the trough, I guess, for the saddle. Jerry did that. I think he did that on the bandsaw. We also lowered a little bit off the top so that there wasn't so much trough. It was just deeper into the saddle, or into the bridge, so the saddle would sit deeper. Anyways, this has been a lot of setting up, getting this kind of put in correctly. There's now felt underneath this piece of the tailpiece, the cover for the tailpiece. It is up to pitch now. Well, close. But you can see we started cleaning it up. When I was polishing the body, I did go ahead and polish the headstock as well, because I thought, you know, it wouldn't look right if this was all shiny and this wasn't. But a couple more things I had to do before this is totally done is some cleanup, you know, getting some of the fingerprints and the handling off of it. There's a couple spots I'm going to fill along the fretboard that just don't look quite right. I mean, they're glued down well. There's just a little bit of a gap, probably from prying the fretboard off. And there's a couple kind of foggy spots I think I can clean up with some water or a damp rag. Anyways, we're at the point in which this is mostly just clean up. One more thing I want to talk about while I'm sitting here with this, and while I've got this right here. This is the original top. Yes, it doesn't match. I was trying to get this color on this, on the new top. I was trying to match the old color, but you've probably heard Jerry say there's an infinite number of ways finishing can go. And after I put the first coat of color on here, I knew that it wasn't going to match. So the priority changed from, instead of make it match, make it look good. And I think we've done that. I do think it looks good. In the long run, you know, in another 100 years, when this took to get this color, this will fade and I think it will match better. But right now, it matches the back fair enough and I think it looks good. We can't always get exactly what we want with finish. This is the best I could do on this. So, I'm going to go ahead and get some filler out, clean some of the stuff up. Go get some warm water. I'm going to clean this up one good time, and then I'll probably get the pick guard out and we can start putting the pick guard on.
Okay, so I've cleaned this out as good as I could using the X-Acto knife. Got in there, scraped out the old glue. I've test fitted it back in there. It seems to fit okay. It's unusual that these pins are not the same shape. Generally, they both go out at the same angle. I tested it back into the mandolin. It seems to work this way, so I'm just going to go with that, assuming that either somebody has re-rigged it or something, but it does seem to kind of go together, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that. I'm going to open this up as gingerly as I can, and in this case, I think what I'm going to do is use a little wedge and try to keep it open. I'll just open it right on the end. I'll take the pin back out. I'm going to use this Beacon 527, which makes this old type of plastic melt. I think it's the best choice for this. This should melt these plastics back together, at least that's my hope. I'm using the end of the X-Acto knife to get the glue down through there really well. I think it's in there as good as it can be. Just going to wipe off the extra glue there. And now I'm going to put this little clamp on there and let it set for a while. I'm putting extra squeeze on it. I'm going to go ahead and force this in there now while it's clamped up, and hopefully that'll glue itself back together, because the glue was in that hole where the nail was. And we'll just let that set for a day or two, even like that. It'll be no worse than it was for sure. I think that'll work. I think what we're going to also do is sand these two nails. I'm pretty sure these are replacements. I don't think these are from the factory, partly because this one goes all the way through. This one's extra long. It shouldn't probably be that long. I'm probably going to cut just a little bit of that one off and clean them both up with some sandpaper or very fine files so that they're smoother, because they're very rough, and that's why they don't come out of the holes very easily.
Well, you can see I mixed up some brown goop. That's some of the Timbermate filler and some light brown dye, and I've filled in a couple gaps that needed it. Oop. I've also gone ahead and wiped down the sides with a moist towel, and I've dried them off with the dry one. I've got the pick guard out, but I think Jerry's going to help me poke the holes for the mount in the side of the neck, just to be safe. So yeah, that's going to be the next thing, is Jerry's going to help me get these two holes kind of cleaned out so we can put this pick guard back on there. That'll be the last thing before this is done. Get this pick guard on. Well, Jerry helped me get the pick guard on here. And it took a little bit of fiddling, but it got on here. And you might notice that there's a couple smudges, so I'm going to go ahead and use the semi-chrome to clean it up.
Never quite turned loose. It's a part of the soul, the heart and the mind of a boy.
Alright, now that it's cleaned up, I'm going to hand it over to Jerry. He's going to take a look at it. I think he's going to play it a little bit, and then this thing can be on its way.
Well, my friends, just take a look at that luscious looking little deal. I guarantee you, just flat guarantee you, that's 100 times better than it ever was in its whole life. And the reason I say that is because that top truly was never carved correctly from the factory. It just wasn't. It was way too thin in a critical area, and it caused that top to fold up and buckle, which caused all kinds of breaks and things. I'm pretty much guaranteeing you that this top, barring any catastrophe like somebody crushing it, just normal playing conditions, this top will last at least 100 years just as it is right here, right now, without anybody ever doing anything to it. So in my opinion, Caleb did a wonderful job on this. I mean, absolutely super wonderful. You can't beat it. It plays pretty easy. I'd be lying if I told you it had the lowest action. It doesn't, but its action isn't crazy high for this style mandolin. I've seen them a lot worse. This still holds the pick up at around the 7th fret there, so, it's not bad. In fact, it's pretty decent. Sound-wise, it's not bad. I prefer the F-hole style mandolins and that, and sound-wise, this isn't my favorite sound, but it's got a very good sound, so let me play it for you, see what you think. nice clear sound. It's got the sound that this style mandolin should have. Now keep in mind, I mean, the finish is only a few days old. You know, you give this thing a couple of months to harden up, dry out, and it's going to be hard to beat for this style mandolin. The looks of it, you know, it really does look like a whole lot of them I've seen over the years. Color-wise, everything. So to me, it's about as good as it gets. Caleb even matched the purfling. He did a great job there on that. I mean, honestly, I don't believe I could have done any better. Honestly, I couldn't have done any better. It's really a nice job. I could have done it a whole lot faster, though. He made a whole career out of this. But no, I'm just giving him a hard time. He did a great job. You know, considering a young man that came in here 5-6 months ago and absolutely had zero experience to carve a top and make it look that good and sound that nice, I don't know how to explain that. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're not yet subscribed, please click the subscribe button and then also click that bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos come out. Thank you very much.